Isn't that crazy? The highest percentage of disapproval rating, the highest disapproval rating percentage is against evangelical Christians, and then atheists, and then Mormons, and then atheists, and then Muslims. Now, this is in 2022. I don't know what it looks like now. Let's be real. Anyway, we're going to get into the Michigan church attack now.
Answers after an attack at a Mormon church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. Police say at least 4 people were and 8 others injured when an armed man drove his car into a crowded church yesterday. Police quickly swarmed to the scene. They the gunman, but now the questions of why. Investigators are still trying to determine what the motive might.
Yeah, they're waiting for Kash Patel to fly out there and find bullet casings that say, "I did this because I'm transgender Antifa." If only. Of course, once again, when it's another MAGA guy, as is the case with the Michigan guy, thoughts and prayers to this heinous attack. Who could have foreseen this? Who could have seen this coming? Okay, first, because the victims were in a church, obviously, people immediately started going with the left. The radical left is attacking churches. You know who's attacking churches in this country? ICE, man. In my life, I've never encountered a radical leftist that's been like, I am so angry at the church that I'm going to shoot at the church proceeding. That's so stupid. Even the most aggressive r/atheism adjacent dipshit would not take revenge on regular churchgoers. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense if you have designed a permanent victimhood narrative as an evangelical Christian in this goddamn country, and you think the left is actually attacking churches or some shit. Virtually all of the church are actually done by white nationalists. Dylan Roof being one of the most famous examples of this. Dylan Roof walked into a black church and up the churchgoers. You're only mad at that church if you're also religious? Well, lo and behold, you're not wrong. I don't know what the immediate motive of the suspect is, but given his demographic profile and his psychographic profile, it does seem like he had a lot of smoke as a Protestant MAGA Republican, evangelical Protestant, white supremacist MAGA Republican, and Iraq war veteran. It seems like he thought that Charlie Kirk was like maybe by a Mormon, so he wanted to take the anger out on Mormons in general. And what's so crazy about it is that, yes, he sat with them, according to witnesses, victims that survived the incident. He sat with them and asked them if they believe Jesus is their Lord and Savior, if they believe in Joseph Smith or some shit. That's what I saw.
Have been here. They have identified the shooter as Thomas Jacob Sanford, a Marine veteran of the war in Iraq. Ian Lee has made his way to the church and joins us now. Ian, what have we learned?
Good morning. The FBI is leading the investigation into the attack. So far, law enforcement isn't speculating on a motive, though they are treating this as an act of targeted violence. Police warn the death toll could rise.
The active shooter at the church.
What should have been a morning of peaceful prayer in Grand Blanc, Michigan, instead turned into a chaotic and terrifying situation when authorities say they believe a 40-year-old armed man attacked hundreds of parishioners.
He drove his vehicle through the front doors of the church. He then exited his vehicle, firing several rounds at individuals within the church.
According to the ATF, the shooter also appeared to have intentionally set to the church, possibly using an accelerant.
I need manpower up here ASAP. I have people trapped in the building.
Grand Blanc's police chief says within...
I thought he was in the church and then got back in his car, rammed his vehicle into the church, lit the car on, and then up a bunch of people. And in the process of like the car caught on and then the church caught on. By the way, I just want to show you the car one more time, which is why they quickly stopped talking about this being a potential radical Antifa left-wing terror. As you can tell, I think, once again, going to be quite difficult for them to present that narrative here. Look at the 2 massive flags. Seems to me like this is yet another Al-Qaeda incident.
Individuals.
ASAP, I have people trapped in the building.
Grand Blanc's police chief says within 30 seconds of receiving the first calls, officers arrived on scene.
They engaged with that particular individual, neutralizing that suspect, and that suspect is no longer with us.
10 victims were
When Burton City Council candidate Chris Johns heard that some churchgoers had burned down the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on September 28th in nearby Grand Blanc, he said not once did he think it was the man he spoke to while canvassing less than a week prior to who went on a tirade against the church and described Mormons as the Antichrist. The man was outgoing, polite, and extremely friendly, John said, and his animosity towards the church didn't seem violent. He said it was very much standard anti-LDS talking points you would find on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. I also dug into this a little bit further and found out that it's actually, do you want to know the most popular religious group in this country is by approval ratings? It's actually Jews. The least popular least popular religious group in this country by approval ratings is evangelical Protestants, and then the second least popular is Mormons. Even more, nope, not atheists. No, it's evangelical Protestants for obvious reason, and then it's Mormons. I think atheists is like the fourth least popular, actually. Yeah, they have a worse approval rating than Muslims broadly. I don't know where it is. I need to find it again. What obvious reasons? Evangelical Protestant Christianity is seen as a blight in American politics for good reason, because the Republicans greatly highlight some of the most reactionary forces in this country who happen to be evangelical Protestant Christians. That's the reason. They are seen as a part of the in-group. What is this? Kaya portrait for you? Oh my God, this is amazing. Wow. This is beautiful, chatter. Thank you. Yeah, no, it is an extremist evangelical who thinks Mormons are devil worshippers.
Taken to the hospital where 2 died. 2 other bodies were later found inside the church.
Yeah, here it is. Americans have a very somewhat favorable opinion of Jews by 35%, mainland Protestants by 30%, Catholics by 34%, evangelical Christians by 28%, atheists by 20%, Muslims by 17%. But if you break it down, here, look. As far as the balance of opinion for favorable versus unfavorable, look at this. The most favorable opinion Americans have is for Jews, and then mainline Protestants are at plus 20. Catholics are at plus 16. Evangelical Christians, I was wrong. Evangelical Christians are at plus 2. I don't know where I got that. I thought evangelical Christians were also roundly criticized and despised. But yeah, the least popular is Mormons. Atheists and Muslims are more popular than atheists and Muslims are I guess, in a balance of opinion, more popular than Mormons even. Evangelical Christians have the highest unfavorable opinion, though. That's what I meant. This is the chart you probably saw. I mean, this chart is the chart, I think. It surprised me. This chart is an expansion of the chart that I just showed you. How does this correlate with the rise of anti-Semitism? What? I'm not talking about the rise of anti-Semitism. What? There's nothing to do with that. Like, people despise evangelical Christians or have a higher disapproval rating of evangelical Christians than they do of atheists and Muslims. Isn't that crazy? The highest percentage of disapproval rating, the highest disapproval rating percentage is against evangelical Christians, and then atheists, and then Mormons, and then atheists, and then Muslims. Now, this is in 2022. I don't know what it looks like now. Let's be real. But why are people against evangelical Christians? Again, I'm going to repeat myself one more time. America is not an evangelical Christian country. But America is captive to the mercy of evangelical Christian politics. America is basically at the mercy of evangelical Christians due to the Republican Party. Why a lot of Americans despise evangelical Christians. Having said that, of course, there are a shit ton of evangelical Christians in the country, and therefore, when it bears itself out on the balance of opinion, they're still at a plus 2 as opposed to atheists and Muslims, which are -4 for atheists and -5 for Muslims. Whereas Mormons have the lowest balance of opinion when you look at the favorability and the unfavorability, where Mormons are at a -10. The highest balance of opinion is for Jews. Not a lot of people have a very or somewhat unfavorable opinion of Jews, but a decent amount of people, the highest percentage of people, have a very / somewhat favorable opinion of Jews. So basically, the U.S. has its own Sunnis versus Shias. For all the hate Muslims get, America is basically the same as any Middle Eastern country at this point. No, I wouldn't. I mean, I didn't realize how much smoke evangelicals had for Mormons. I didn't realize how many people despised Mormons this much, because from my perspective, like, I joke about Mormons all the time, but out of like mainline Christianity, I would say that they're fairly inoffensive. I mean, they're a cult, but I mean, I think the reason why people hate Mormons is because they find it to be they're heretic. They are not mainline. No, I know they're not mainline. I'm Muslim. From my perspective, you're all Christian. I don't make the delineations between Catholicism and Christianity or even Mormons. From my perspective, you're all Christian, okay? Obviously, Mormonism is like relatively new and much different than like the regular versions of Christianity that exist. But someone said Muslims are more Christian than Mormons, to be for real. You're not wrong. That's correct. They view Mormons as heretics. Mormons do not believe in Mary being the mother of God. I mean, there's different there's different subsects of Christianity that also don't believe that. Calling Mormonism Christian is like calling Muslims Christian. Someone already did that. Anytime religion comes up in this chat, everybody gets up in their feelings for what I'm saying. Mormons fought the U.S. Army and tried to establish their own country. They always been on the shit list. Mormons built an entire religion on being persecuted, and it ended up causing them to literally make up a lot of the shit that gets them hate, and people looking at them weird, they themselves in the foot. Yeah, this guy's losing his mind. Hasan, please take that back. Catholics are nothing like Mormons. Hasan, please take this back. You have no idea what you're doing. You can't do this. Catholicism does not equal Mormon. Turks are not Arab. You cannot say these things. Hasan, please no. I'm gay. Hasan, my pee-pee hard. Okay, I'm sorry.
Police have identified the deceased suspect as 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford from nearby Burton, Michigan. CBS News has learned that Sanford is a Marine who served from 2004 to 2008 and was deployed as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. The local police chief commended the bravery of churchgoers who put their lives on the line to protect others during the...
They were shielding the children who were also present within the church, moving them to safety. Just hundreds of people just practicing their faith, just extreme courage, and that's the type of community that we are.
Stories of heroics are already starting to come out. We spoke with a man who helped people flee into the woods. He and his wife also helped some elderly ladies escape in their car as the gunman at them. He says they only sustained minor injuries from shattered glass.
Ian Lee, thank you.
On Sunday morning, a madman killed at least 4 people and wounded 8 others at a Michigan Latter-day Saints church. The horror started around 10:30 a.m. when he rammed his Chevy Silverado truck into the building, where hundreds of worshipers had gathered for a Sunday service in Grand Blanc Township. The vehicle had 2 large American flags behind the cab and a set of deer antlers attached to the bumper. He then got out and opened with a rifle on the congregation and set the church ablaze, causing the entire structure to burn down. So what do we know about the sicko who did this? The suspect's name is...
New York Post can't be serious even for a brief fucking moment, bro. I swear to God. Like, you can't use that professional tone while being like, this sicko that actually did this. Like, it's just, please, man. Please, like, be a normal news outlet for once in your goddamn lives, man.
Thomas Jacob Sanford from nearby Burton, Michigan. He was a 40-year-old Iraq War veteran.
Let's see if they fucking mention his politics.
Who served in the U.S. Marines. A Facebook post by Sanford's mother says the gunman served in Iraq from 2004 to 2008. According to Fox News, he worked as an organizational automotive mechanic and vehicle recovery operator who earned a number of awards for his service and achieved the rank of sergeant. Social media...
Laura Loomer goes on a tirade after the tragedy in a Mormon church suggesting violence would link the Muslims and the Muslim Brotherhood. Meanwhile, the shooter has been pictured previously in a Trump t-shirt. The tactic is to blame Muslims and immigrants reflexively. Remember, when you don't care about the facts, you shape reality according to your agenda and ideology. Yeah. For the record, this is the meta. It's either Muslim or Antifa or trans or, like, depending on what you care about the most, right? Laura Loomer obviously is a massive shill for Israel, and therefore she has everything. She has every interest in basically heightening the tensions and heightening Islamophobia. So she's going to say it's Muslims. A lot of people like Matt Walsh will say it's a trans person. Like, depending on who the conservative person is, know that they're going to lie to you, but just know how they're going to lie to you. It's like the direction of the lie is going to reveal what their personal project is, their pet project is in this instance. And their pet project, the pet project for Laura Loomer, obviously, is Islam. It always has been, and will continue to be. And for many other Republicans, they'll just say, like, for Candace will tell you it's the Jews. The true. Candace Owens will say it's Israel.
Accounts believed to be connected to Sanford reveal he was a family.
I mean, you can tell the dude is definitely a homegrown white boy, though. The way that New York Post is covering it, like the Zach Fox tweet. You feel me? They're literally talking. They're posting it like this dude who just shut up a Mormon church is like the nicest guy you've ever seen.
Man with a wife and a young son. Pictures posted on Facebook show the family smiling, posing in the beds of pickup trucks, or in a field of tall sunflowers. A dormant GoFundMe page from 2015 raised more than $3,000 for the couple's now 10-year-old son, who was born with congenital hyperinsulinism, or CHI, a rare genetic condition in which the pancreas releases too much insulin. As authorities investigate what led Sanford to commit his sickening crime, former Assistant FBI Director Chris Swecker told Fox and Friends First that a motive is already in sight.
The FBI has taken the lead. That means they're treating this as either a hate crime or an act of domestic. The investigation is deep into it at this point with regard to motive.
White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt indicated that the gunman targeted the worshipers because of their faith.
Well, from what I understand, based on my conversations with the FBI director, all they know right now is this was an individual who hated people of the Mormon faith. And they are trying to understand more about this, how premeditated it was, how much planning.
Yeah, they were just trying to figure out a way to blame this on Trantifa. Okay? Conservatives lied about a shirt. By the way, they spread a Photoshop blank t-shirt and claimed the Trump thing was Photoshopped. It was immediately disprovable, and they still ran within the Daily Caller. Retracted. Eric Swalwell appears to post Photoshop picture to call church attack suspect MAGA. Retraction notice. After publishing the story, the Daily Caller discovered that the photo shared by Representative Swalwell was the original photo, not the altered version. We deeply regret the error. Do you? Do you deeply regret the error? I don't think you deeply regret the error. Yeah, I saw that too. Every major conservative account immediately ran with the idea that this photo was actually photoshopped. That's what they did. What a stupid and dishonest dichotomy. When this fat, bald R-word decided to do what he did, conservatives didn't come out and say it was deserved. The problem is the action, yes, but the bigger problem in the political ecosystem is that rationalizes and supports violence. First of all, as Brian Krassenstein correctly points out, they certainly did do that for Paul Pelosi. And secondly, it very clearly doesn't matter how many people, myself included, said political violence is unacceptable in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination, because conservatives obviously still went along with the notion that, like, everyone was celebrating and demanding more of it. They tried to community note your tweet saying it was AI. What are you talking about? Anyway, the problem here in this instance, as it is always the case, is not about political violence only being one directional, even though if you were to look at it as a one directional thing, you would realize that that direction is not left-wing violence. Here's a great example of this that also took place over the weekend when Axios came out with a report that the Department of Homeland Security itself actually identified. The White House Deputy Press Secretary, sorry. Here it is. The White House Deputy Press Secretary looked at this graph and thought, those gray bars are totally fine. Everyone will understand that only the yellow ones are a problem. Left and right-wing U.S. attacks, U.S. domestic attacks. Study, left-wing climbs to 30-year high. The gray bars are right-wing instances of terror. Annually from 1994 to 2025. The yellow bar is what they've declared is left-wing. Okay? The White House Deputy Press Secretary looked at this graph and thought those gray bars are totally fine. Everyone will understand that only the yellow ones are a problem. And the issue is, as I also called out, Republicans do think that. It's quite remarkable that political polarization and anti-intellectualism has made it so that you can directly stare at a chart that shows that the overwhelming majority of domestic come from the right, and people will still believe the opposite claim. It's insane. I recall the way that partisanship and anti-intellectualism was actually running amok during the COVID era, when COVID first began, and Donald Trump would come out and be like, well, Barack Obama also mishandled the swine flu. Dog, the swine flu less people than COVID had at that point. Democrats are supposed to be the ones who actually make this false equivocation, this false equivalency between swine flu and COVID, and say Barack Obama handled swine flu perfectly well, and that's the reason why swine flu didn't kill as many people as COVID is doing. And yet it didn't matter. Nothing matters. Do you understand? Like, Republicans can use a false equivalence that actually doesn't even favor them in the argument, that actually dunks on them as an own just by simply mentioning it as a Republican. That's it. Under normal circumstances, it would be the Democrats that said swine flu less than COVID. This would be a false equivalence that the Democrats are using in an insincere manner. Yet Donald Trump literally did that as though somehow this was a way to destroy the Democrat position. Oh, people, please read this comment. People misread the graph thinking the yellow is taller than the gray boxes instead of understanding that the yellow bar sits on top of the gray bar. Please make this clear. Oh, that's why they're misunderstanding it? Yeah, no, that's not the case. Here's an even better version of that graph. Hold on. This. Okay? Figure 4. Left-wing versus right-wing attacks and plots in the United States from 1994 to 2025. Here's a better graph. Perhaps it's because I know what the truth is that immediately when I saw that graph, I understood exactly what that graph was presenting. But I can understand why people would think that like left-wing violence is more than right-wing in this graph. It doesn't matter though. Abigail Jackson, the White House Deputy Press Secretary, should know better. Ay, ay, ay. I already covered Laura Loomer immediately lying about it. The misinformation environment is tuned up to 11 at this point, and people just like straight up lie instantly after any sort of breaking news story to be first to market.
Went into it, whether he left a note, all of those questions have yet to be answered.
President Trump echoed that sentiment in a Truth Social post, in which he wrote, "This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians in the United States. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately." A city council candidate has since revealed a disturbing encounter he said he had with Sanford on September 22nd, when he was door-knocking constituents. Chris Johns told the Detroit Free Press that the two chatted for about 20 minutes, with Sanford at one point opening up about his time serving in Iraq as a U.S. Marine and struggling with drug addiction upon returning home. But what started out as a friendly conversation took a sharp turn when the subject of religious faith was brought up and Sanford started ranting against Mormons after revealing he had a relationship with a woman whose family was Mormon when he lived in Utah. It was very much standard anti-LDS talking points that you would find on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, John said, and culminated when Sanford stated that he considered Mormonism the Antichrist. The Burton City Council candidate said he recognized Sanford immediately when his picture was released after the "There's certain things you don't forget," he said. "This is not a forgettable guy." Sanford died at the scene during a gun battle with a Grand Blanc Township police officer and a Department of Natural Resources officer who responded to the cops were on the scene 30 seconds after.
Yeah, also the main chud talking point is that the shooter donated to Act Blue. These guys are so stupid, okay? He did the same thing with Ryan Ruth. Or no, not the same thing with Ryan Ruth. This is real. Ryan Ruth did donate to Act Blue, but I think he also voted for Donald Trump. But you're wait, what? He donated to Act Blue? What is this link that you just sent me? No, the main conspiracy in this Act Blue, in the Act Blue situation was that this guy, you sent the wrong one. This is, no. Ryan Ruth did donate to Act Blue, but he also voted for Donald Trump. But that's not who we're talking about. Ryan Ruth is Donald Trump and then stabbed himself in the court proceedings like last week. This guy, this is a wrong tweet. The chatter sent me the wrong one, okay? This guy also had his own Act Blue saga. Conservatives went forward with Act Blue narratives. They said that this guy actually donated to Act Blue and the Democratic Party. It was literally a different guy with the same name. Here it is. And you know what's really sinister about this, for the record? Sanford Thomas J, right? Act Blue, Act Blue, Act Blue. Yeah, that's the wrong guy. And these pieces of shit actually deleted the part. They cut this in a way that shows in a way that doesn't show where the donations were made. Because if you knew what state the donations were made, you would recognize that this is a different Thomas J. Sanford. Because the Thomas J. Sanford that donated Blue Origin Political Action Committee was doing that donation in Virginia. The Thomas J. Sanford that the church was in Michigan. And he was 100% a Trump supporter, by the way. It's so up. It's so up how much these guys just lie, dude. It is so crazy. Mormon church suspect at Trump sites outside of his home, by the way. Google Maps images show that the suspect was dead by the police at Trump sign outside of his Michigan house. You want to know how they tried to make this work, by the way? Here, I'll show you. That's a Trump and Vance sign, okay? Or a Trump Pence sign, or is it a Trump Vance sign? One or the other. Anyway, they tried to claim that this stop sign was actually saying stop Trump, as though this wasn't a regular stop sign on Google Maps, but instead they were trying to say that he was trying to make a political statement about stop Trump. That's what they tried to claim. I'm so done, dude. I'm so done. People are so insane nowadays, man. They are so stupid. What do you do with these people?
Calls started coming in and took out the suspect in about 8 minutes. Detectives are reportedly probing.
Yeah, he was wearing the shirt. Yeah, he was wearing the shirt on his Facebook. They found it. And then obviously, Republican psychos immediately claimed this was a Photoshop. And then they Photoshopped the shirt without this on it and claimed that was the real shirt. How do we fix this? All you liberals do is cry nonstop and violent as, oh my God. Yeah, anyway, if you want to see his Facebook, LDS church shooter Thomas Jacob Sanford and his entire family aren't just Trump supporters. They're hardcore MAGA conspiracy lunatics. His Facebook is still up. The thread will be their MAGA posts and pictures from Facebook. Kids' faces are grayed out. Anti-masker. This is how the crazy left will go without power. Imagine them with power. Posting Jesse Waters. Posting Turning Point USA. 4 common causes of headaches. Loud noises, bright lights, ear infections. Arguing with leftists. All aboard the Trump train. That's Brenda, Walter, Sanford. Join a great group of guys. Lincoln, Teddy, Ike, Reagan, Trump. Here's that famous veteran that went viral. We're not going to be peaceful much longer. Video shows fed up vet. Savaging. Thomas Jacob Sanford and his family didn't just post about Trump and MAGA on their Facebook. They went to rallies and demonstrated, of course. Here's Brenda, Walter, Sanford. COVID-19 vaccines use aborted fetal tissue. My body, my choice. How can anyone deny he is right-wing? Because people are just stupid and biased. There's no other way to explain it. They're just on permanent cope. They're just permanently in a state of copium. Anyway, that's why your commitment to the truth, as with the Charlie Kirk suspect Groyper stuff, was so important. Yeah. I will obviously, even if it's like someone who is... Even if it's someone who has like left adjacent values or views or whatever in the aftermath of it or anything like that, I'm obviously still going to dive deep into what the actual truth is and try to pick apart all of the partisan misinformation vectors, which unfortunately have become all too common. So much so that people literally now present it on Wall Street Journal and shit like that. Is so up.